Welcome to This Day with BJ Arnett, and I am BJ Arnett. I'm looking forward to talking to this lady because I'm a mom. My husband and I have 5 children together, and they are all adults now, but we have grands that are coming up. You know, these little folks are being born, and I'm very excited about that, but I'm always concerned about their education. And our guest today is Dr. Dolores Barnes, who is going to be talking to us about test taking. She is the author of Mastering the Art of Test Taking. How many of you had a ball in your stomach every time your teacher said, "We're going to take a test. We're going to take a test"? I remember the sweat on my brow. I remember tapping my hands. I remember thinking, well, if I write it in my hand, will she see it? But the art of test taking is important.
Absolutely.
Why do people get so wound up, balled up?
Because testing, people don't like to be tested on what they know. Even though we know it's an absolute necessity, but they get very nervous because you're being tested on your knowledge of something. And people have a fear of failure. So what happens is we all have this mechanism of flight or fight, and people get into a flight mode. And so they might be physically at the test, but mentally they're not. And so they see the test as a threat. So when they look at the test and they feel like it's a threat, they're ready to, their mind is ready to go.
So their mind removes themselves from a difficult situation.
Absolutely. It's like David and Goliath in the Bible.
Yes.
With David, he saw this big Goliath. He had a plan. That's what testing is like. It's a strategy. He had a strategy. He went and got his little bag, got his little 5 rocks, smooth rocks, and he said he's going to bring Goliath down. Even though maybe the people around him didn't believe it, but that's how tests are. They're like Goliath, and you have to take Goliath and you have to bring him down with your strategies, and that's your weapons. You have to use the things that you need, which is good study habits. You have to have excellent listening skills, and especially on the anxiety part, where I was just telling you about fight or flight, well, you have to have a method of controlling it. You have to have a method of putting that anxiety in a box.
So that it doesn't overtake you.
Yes.
You, in essence, overtake it.
Right. And when you look at the test, you actually have to humanize the test almost. You have to say, okay, I'm going to sit down here and I'm going to beat you. You are not going to beat me. And so what
I love that.
So
I'm going to tell you why I love it. Because when I was a kid, I had to say to myself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And I kept saying it. And sometimes I would succeed and sometimes I wouldn't. I realized as I was growing up that the times that I really believed that I was going to beat the test, I did. And the times that I came in cowering because I didn't study, because I half the time didn't listen to the teacher.
Excellent points that you're making, because what happens is this. Most people say, I'm a bad test taker. The reality is no one is really a bad test taker. It's just that they don't know how to prepare for the test. And so they say to themselves, I'm a bad test taker. And then you know what they do? They don't study for the test. Because they say, well, why should I study when I'm a poor test taker? I don't need to.
So they set themselves up for failure.
For failure. And so what I do when I tutor, I've tutored people for many, many years, and I always tell them, there's no such thing as a bad test taker. You just have to prepare for the test, bring your weapons, and strategize on how you're going to pass the test, which, by the way, is something that I didn't do when I was in school. When I was in high school, I really, really struggled. I had a really hard time. And when I got to college, I almost flunked out of my first semester of college because I wasn't prepared. And so I was in the library one day sitting around, and I looked outside and I saw some of my friends playing football, and they were A students. I said to myself, how? Wait a minute now. I'm in the library, literally. I would be in the library 8 or 9 hours a day.
Wow.
Trying to pass. And listen, I'm failing while I'm doing this.
Wow.
So I said to myself, there's got to be another way. They must be doing something I'm not doing. And that's how I ended up writing the book. And I found their strategies. And once I did, believe it or not, I graduated from high school at the bottom of my class. Graduated from high school from college with honors. And I mean that
because it was that decision. That decision clicked in.
Yes. And I started thinking of myself as an A student. When I was in high school, I would always look at the A students and I would say, I could never do that. I could never be that person.
Ooh, the words of your mouth.
Right. And because of it, I settled for it. But then when I realized that, hey, I want to be better, and I want to do better. And once I realized that, I said, okay, now how am I going to do it? And I had that plan. And once I put that plan together, I started tutoring people, and I saw them excel. I mean, students that were literally failing, I saw them go from D and F students to A's and B's. And I said, you know, I should be able to help a whole lot of people at one time instead of one person at a time. So I took all of the strategies and I put them in a book so that people can read it, quick read, very easy, simple read.
Because that's the other thing. People don't like to read.
Yes, and if you can do it in a matter of a couple of days, you can get to the point quickly so you can save yourself from the class. One thing that when I was in college, I never wanted to see another class again. If I'm taking math, I don't want to see Math 101 ever again. I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to see the teacher.
Right.
None of it.
Right.
So that's why I said, I'm not repeating these classes. I've got to do better, and I've got to figure out how to do it. And once I did, it turned out to be so easy, and I've turned so many students into A students just by simply using a method. Because a lot of people, when they take a test, they think that it's all just about the studying.
Right.
So then they'll just study the material, and they go in and get ready to take the test, and they're like, I can't remember this, can't remember that, because they had no plan. And they didn't have a plan as to how to answer questions that they studied, but they don't, when they look at the test, they say, I don't know if I know the answer to that or not. There's a strategy to approaching those type of questions and getting them right.
There's something that I've always thought, and I want to ask the expert. When you're an adult taking a test, is it different from when you were a child?
No. As a matter of fact, the anxiety increases when you become an adult, and you have to take like a nursing test, any kind of board certification, because there's a lot more on the line. When you're in high school or middle school, you don't have to worry about those things. So you don't do well, you try better on the next one. Some people, their jobs are on the line if they don't pass these things.
Exactly
so the
right.
anxiety is if not the same, but actually greater. But I've helped nurses to pass their certifications and so forth.
Where were you when I was taking my MBA? No, you know, it was like I had to go back in my mind and say, hey, I know this information. I just need to put it in this box so when that test comes up, I can just pull from that box. I really had, when you say system, I get it, because I really had to put together a system. Because all of life continues to go while you're taking that test. So things happen in the room. You know, here's the favorite of an adult. Your cell phone, it should be put away somewhere because it'll vibrate on the desk. It's, you know, it's something that's going to distract you. So you've got to put that in your plan as well, not to be distracted. As you've looked at test taking and just the realm of life, are some of these strategies even good for just simply living out a fulfilled, successful life?
Absolutely, because when you have a plan, you can apply it to anything that you do. You know, you really can. So even with test taking, if you lay out your strategy, you get on a study schedule and you do those things and you become regimented, it walks right into your adulthood as you're young. So you have to have a plan to do just about anything. And it's the same thing with taking tests. You have to have that strategy. And like you say, it can carry right over into adulthood. And then anxiety, like I was telling you before about that flight or fight mechanism, you have to fight and you have to think positive, because a lot of times when people think they can't do something, they can't do it. So you have to, just like the Bible says, believe it and then receive it. And that's what you have to do. When you're taking a test, don't back up. Sit there and say, okay, I'm nervous, because honestly, still when I take a test, there's a certain amount of anxiety that I have, but I can control it. And the way that I used to do it when I was in college and in graduate school is I would be regimented. I would do everything a certain way every time. I'd sit down, I'd put my watch to the left, I'd put my books down to the right, I would, you know, write out a note sheet the night before. This is an excellent tip for people that are listening. On the night before the test, take 5 minutes and write out a note sheet on the paper, and then that's the night before. So That night you study it. When you get up in the morning, don't talk to your friends. They have a lot of anxiety themselves. So what I would do is go to the library. I would hide out before the test and prepare myself like you do for battle.
Yes.
So I would be like, I've got to take this test and I've got to focus fully on it. And so that's what I would do. And then when the teacher when I put everything away, and then the teacher says, okay, he hands the test out, I'd raise my hand and say, can I please write on my paper? For the first 5 minutes, I would not look at my test. I would write that note sheet, I would regurgitate it on the back of my test, and it would calm me right down.
Oh, that's a good one. Now, that's a good strategy.
Yeah, by the time 5 minutes goes by, because I watch my watch after I finish writing the note sheet, now my anxiety level has
gone down.
Oh, it's about right here.
How much you remember.
Yes.
You said, okay, I got that, I got that, I got that.
And then when I would look at the test, I would only look at the number of questions and then do the time accordingly. I would never flip through, like people will grab the test and they start flipping through trying to find, you know what they're looking for?
Where do I see the right answers?
Where do I see something I don't know the answer to? And then they spend the rest of the test stressed out over that. But that's really what people are doing.
So that'll lock you down, that'll shut you down.
So you shouldn't flip through the test to see what you know and don't know. You just simply see how many questions you have and then take them one at a time.
Wow.
That's it.
You know, I got totally enthralled with that thought because as a university professor, I look at my students and I say to them, if I can take a test and develop strategies that will keep me from failing, you can too. But you just articulated that so well. First of all, the flight and fight, that is a concept I don't think I'm going to forget. But then the other thing, and I see them do this, flipping through the test to see, okay, I can answer this one, I can answer this one, I don't know that. And when they get to that, I don't know that one, you can see them lock up. And it's the same with young people, with little people, with elementary school students.
Absolutely.
That lockup happens. What a freeing concept to be able to have an art of taking the test.
There is an art to it.
There is an art to it. Mastering the art of taking a test. You know, there's something that is important to all parents, that our children succeed, that they reach they reach this thing that we see for them.
Yes.
You know, I don't think any parent looks at their child and says, in their heart of hearts, and says they'll never be anything. You want your child to be great and stand in their greatness. And I like this book, and I know that it will help us help our children and ourselves. For those of you who are going back to school and doing what I did, I went back to school, 8 years ago. And I'm sure I'll go back again some point, not because I want to, but it really helps you really move into a strategy and an understanding of what you need to do that fits for you to make test taking a breeze. You got to tackle that thing. You got to make it just really go down, because it's your test, it's your time, and you're the winner of this thing. I really want you to know that I think that you have stepped into something that's massive, because I've never spoken to anyone of any age that didn't say at some point in their lives they had anxiety about a test, about a life issue, which is also a test.
Right.
With what you have been commanded to do in writing this book, you have done a great service.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. We can find more about mastering the art of test taking at testtakingguru.com. You're the guru of test taking.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you are. Dr. Dolores Barnes, she's the guru of test taking. So if you have someone in your life who's not reaching their full potential, it's simply because they need to take it down. They need to fight, not fly. I'm BJ Arnett, and this is all about you today. If you've had a moment that you feel like you can't make it, that anxiety is taking you out, this is the book to take a look at. Mastering the Art of Test Taking. Hope you have a fabulous day. Love ya. Bye.